Welcome to the Win Win Evangelism Podcast. My name's Tina Waldrom from Evangelism in Australia. Every week we explore how to share Jesus in ways that connect with real people in today's world. Whether you're a believer looking for tips and ideas or leading a church or Christian organisation, this podcast will be an invaluable resource for you, with discussion questions at the end of each episode in our show notes that will help you further. In today's episode, we're asking a big and important question. Why are so many Australians turning away from Christianity? And what can we do about it? We'll unpack 6 key insights from national research that reveal what's really going on, what turns people off, what misconceptions they have, and where the genuine opportunities are for believers to engage differently. These insights come from some of the most trusted resources that are studying faith and culture in Australia, including McCrindle Research's Faith and Belief in Australia and Australian Communities Reports, the Australian Bureau of Statistics Census Data, and also the NCLS Research Australian Community Survey. Together they paint a really clear picture for us of how Australians think about spirituality and the church today. And by the end of this episode, you'll not only understand the main reasons that Christianity is losing traction, but you'll also walk away with practical ways to rebuild trust and spark curiosity about Jesus in your everyday life. So let's dive into it. The church's stance on sexuality. It's our biggest public blocker. McCrindle's research reveals to us that one of the top barriers stopping Australians from engaging with Christianity is the church's stance on sexuality, including homosexuality. Around 1 in 3 non-Christians listed this as a complete blocker to exploring faith. This issue, it's less about theology in most people's minds and more about relationship. Many Australians have friends or family who identify as LGBTQ+. So when they hear Christian views on sexuality, they hear rejection of people they love. For believers, this means how we communicate truth matters as much as the truth itself. Jesus modeled both uncompromising truth and radical compassion. People who were socially excluded felt safe around him because his love came before any correction. If the church is to have any credible voice in this space, it must lead with empathy, humility, and listening without losing convictions. Here's a couple of, I'll call them focus points. Lead with listening. Before you speak on any moral issue, take time to understand the story, the pain, the perspective behind the person. Listening communicates love. Reflect Jesus' posture, not his position. Ask, if Jesus was sitting with this person right now, how would he make them feel seen and valued, even in disagreement? I guess the second big point is the perception of hypocrisy. The gap between Jesus and the church. In McCrindle's data, many Australians said they admired Jesus, but they distrust Christians or they distrust the church. People described a gap between the message of Jesus and the behaviour of those who represent him. This perception of hypocrisy is deeply damaging because people assume if Jesus changes lives, why don't his followers seem changed? It's not that they reject the gospel, they reject what they see as inconsistency, right? Australians value authenticity. Australians of all people, they, excuse me saying this, but they smell the BS. So every time a Christian lives out quiet integrity, admits mistakes, or shows humility, it rebuilds that trust. And our public witness isn't mainly in our words, but it's in our consistency. So a couple of focus points. Close the credibility gap. Be quick to apologize when you fall short and consistent in your everyday integrity. That's what earns the trust back. And reflect Jesus, not the stereotype. Let people see compassion. Let people see grace. Let people see humility, not just opinions. A small act of kindness can undo years of cynicism. My next thought, faith feels distant. Many Australians don't know Christians personally. Well, this is what the research shows. McCrindle found that 1.5 million Australian adults don't personally know a Christian. For them, Christianity isn't lived experience, it's a media concept. That means that this relationship gap is one of the biggest reasons Christianity seems irrelevant. If people never meet someone who follows Jesus, their views of faith is shaped by stereotypes or scandals or the loudest voice online at the time. And evangelism in this climate is not about argument, it's about access. Every friendship a Christian builds is a chance for someone to experience a living example of grace and authenticity. A couple of focus points then. Be intentionally present. Join community groups, volunteer, or just build friendships outside church circles. Let people see Christianity in your life. Or should I say, church leader, join groups outside of your church. Get your church involved with groups outside. Build friendships, the church corporately, build friendships outside of the church circles, inside the church. Practice relational evangelism. Focus on being a genuine friend before being a persuasive speaker. Your consistent love opens hearts to the gospel. So challenging, but great focus points. Let me ask you a question. Are you equipped to share your faith? Is your church ready to do the same? Our evangelism training helps both individual believers and church leaders foster a culture of evangelism. It equips everyday Christians to have natural faith conversations and provides pastors with the tools to train their church. With flexible online resources, you can learn at your own pace, anytime, anywhere. Don't leave evangelism to chance. Visit evangelisminaustralia.com to get started. The next thing that research shows, there's a loss of trust in institutions, cultural and social shifts. Australia is increasingly secular and post-institutional. Trust in organised institutions, including government, media, and yes, religion, has declined steadily. McCrindle found that many Australians identify as spiritual but not religious, preferring to explore meaning on their own terms. So this shift means that people are open to spirituality, but they're very suspicious of structures. They may still believe in God or purpose, but not want to associate with organised religion. So the challenge for churches is to show that faith is not just an institution. It truly is a relationship. So we need to build faith as relational, not institutional. We need to model faith as relational, not institutional. When you talk about Jesus, share those personal experiences of his presence and his guidance, not just church programs. Just think about that, how often people can talk about a church program that happened or their child went to this thing at church or that thing, which is wonderful, but share personal experiences of his presence and guidance and stop focusing on talking about and sharing those church programs. Rebuild trust through authenticity. Be transparent about struggles and real life. It's that vulnerability that makes faith credible in a culture that distrusts performance. I'm going to say that again because this is so very true. I'm seeing this all the time in my life. Rebuild trust through authenticity. Vulnerability makes faith credible in a culture that distrusts performance. Some of the challenge can be for Christians and for pastors is to be vulnerable, because sometimes we can feel that that vulnerability discredits our faith or appears to make us look weak or feel weak. But in fact, it is the opposite that happens if we can be transparent about our struggles and real life. The next thing that the research shows is that negative media narratives and scandals really shape public opinion in Australia. According to McCrindle's data, many Australians' impressions of Christianity come from the media coverage, not personal experience. So unfortunately, the media spotlight often lands on church scandals, abuse, hypocrisy, or power misuse, reinforcing the negative perceptions. And haven't we seen a lot of that in Australia over the last couple of years? When a church leader falls, the story doesn't just damage that ministry, it ripples through the national psyche, so to speak, confirming the suspicion towards religion. And meanwhile, the everyday good that Christians do, serving the poor, mentoring youth, supporting families, rarely makes the headlines. The Christians can't control the media, but we can shape the narrative through our lives. Every act of quiet integrity and compassion is a counter story to the cynicism. So tell better stories. Focus on this. Tell better stories. Share testimonies, good news, and community impact online and in person. Shine light on what God is doing through ordinary believers, or shine light on what God is doing through your life when you talk to people. Respond with grace, not defensiveness. Remember this, always respond with grace, not defensiveness. When scandals do arise, acknowledge the wrong, express the sorrow, but show a better way. That's how trust begins to rebuild with the friends around us, with the neighbours around us, with the council that our local church works with. Another thought that the research shows is that young Australians want spirituality, not institutions. Touched on this a little bit. But McCrindle's newest report, The Undercurrent of Faith, shows that while religious affiliation is dropping, spiritual openness among young people remains very high. Many say they believe in something bigger, that they just resist the traditional hierarchical religion. The report found that movement away from Christianity is often due not to a disbelief in God, but dissatisfaction with how Christianity is practiced. Young Aussies want meaning, community and purpose, but they value this authenticity over authority. You know, this is really both a challenge and an opportunity for us right now. Churches that focus on real questions, service, creativity, and relational discipleship can connect deeply with this generation. So engage young people through authenticity. Maybe you've got young people in your life. Maybe you're a youth leader. Maybe you're a young adults worker. Maybe you're the church pastor listening to this, but make sure it's through authenticity with young people. Share your faith stories honestly, including your doubts and struggles. I've talked about this. I feel like I'm saying it over and over. Young Australians value realness over the polish. Realness over the polish. Realness over the show. Lots to think about there of how we even deliver, how we do our church services. Show faith in action. Demonstrate that following Jesus changes how you treat others. Demonstrate that following Jesus shows how you handle stress. Demonstrate that following Jesus changes how you make life choices. Relevance attracts the openness. So those are just some thoughts today on why Aussies are struggling with engaging with Christianity, but some great keys of how we can answer that, how we can engage in what's going on. So thank you so much for joining me for this episode today. I'll be back next week with another episode. I hope today's conversation has really helped you see more clearly why so many Aussies are turning away from Christianity and what we can actually do about it. Remember, it isn't about pointing fingers at the culture. It's about learning how to reflect Jesus more authentically in the way that we live, speak, and love others. Every one of us can play a part in rebuilding trust and helping people take a fresh look at who Jesus really is. As I said at the beginning, if you want to go deeper personally or with your small group as a church, in the show notes, there will be small group discussions for you. It's perfect for you as a church, Bible studies, as I'm saying, anyone who wants to go deeper. Thank you so much for listening. Go well for the rest of your week in Jesus' name, and I'll see you next week.